The moment the first knife slammed against the brick wall inches from her head, Amina realized she was already dead if she moved wrong. Amina stumbled backward, heart hammering, eyes wide as three masked men advanced, their knives glinting in the neon reflections from the streetlights. Every instinct screamed to run, but her legs refused to obey. A sharp click sounded behind her. A gun. The masked men froze mid-step, their bravado evaporating like smoke. "You will not touch her," a voice low and deadly cut through the air. From the shadows, a tall man emerged, his black suit immaculate, eyes dark as midnight. The men hesitated, knives trembling in their hands. "She's just a girl," one muttered. "Move or die," the man said, his gaze never leaving Amina. The knives clattered to the ground as the men scrambled backward. Amina's knees nearly gave out, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from him. There was danger in him, yes, but also something impossibly magnetic, something that made her pulse race even as terror gripped her chest. "You, why are you here?" she whispered, voice shaking. He didn't answer. He only studied her for a long, tense moment, and in that instant she knew. Nothing would ever be the same. Amina Carter's heart slammed against her ribs as she backed up, her palms pressed against the cold brick, trying to steady her shaking. Three masked men blocked the only exit, their knives glinting under the flickering light. She swallowed hard. Her legs wanted to run, but her body refused to move. A gun clicked behind her. She froze, and the air seemed to thicken. "You will not touch her," a low, commanding voice said. From the shadows, a tall man stepped forward, his black suit immaculate, eyes dark and sharp as obsidian. The men hesitated, exchanging glances. "Boss, it's just a girl," one muttered, voice trembling. "She is not just a girl," the man said. His gaze remained fixed on Amina, and she felt it penetrate every layer of her fear. "Move aside, or you die." The knives clattered to the ground as the men scrambled backward. Heart pounding, Amina didn't dare speak. The stranger's presence radiated danger, a magnet pulling all attention to him. Yet for some reason, she didn't feel afraid, only a strange pull, an unexplainable calm. Why are you here?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling. He didn't answer. Instead, he studied her for a long moment, eyes narrowing. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving a silence that roared in her ears. Amina fell to her knees, the adrenaline crashing like a tidal wave. She didn't know it yet, but this night would change everything. 3 days earlier, Amina had stepped off the plane at Incheon International Airport, a suitcase in one hand and dreams in the other. Seoul was dazzling, alive, and nothing like her quiet neighborhood in Lagos. The neon lights, the organized chaos, the bustling streets, it all made her pulse quicken with excitement. She had arrived for her scholarship at the prestigious Seoul International Arts Academy, a step closer to the career she had fought for since she was a little girl dancing in her small living room, imagining stadiums and applause. She dragged her suitcase through the airport, eyes wide, absorbing everything. Her phone buzzed with a message from her best friend back home, wishing her luck. She smiled, the tiniest spark of nerves hidden beneath her enthusiasm. Her first week had been a whirlwind of new faces, challenging classes, and trying not to get lost in the labyrinth of the campus. Nothing, however, had prepared her for the shadows that followed her that night. After a long day of dance practice, she took a shortcut back to her dorm through a narrow, dimly lit street. She wanted only to get back, shower, and sleep. But then she saw it. A group of men in suits exchanging briefcases and whispers, tension cutting through the air like a knife. Amina froze. She wasn't supposed to see this. Every instinct screamed to run, but curiosity rooted her feet to the ground. She could make out fragments of conversation. "Tonight, everything changes," one said. "Don't fail me," another whispered. And then she heard it, a soft laugh, not harsh, not threatening, but commanding. She turned slightly and saw him, standing across from the group, arms folded, presence exuding a force she had never felt before. Dark eyes scanned the men like a predator calculating its next move. Her stomach dropped. She knew immediately this man was not ordinary. Something about him made her pulse race and her breath catch. And when his eyes landed on hers, unblinking, unwavering, she felt herself exposed in a way that terrified and intrigued her all at once. The night after witnessing the meeting, Amina couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed the image of the man, the one who had held back death in the alley. She tried to convince herself that he was just a dangerous man, probably part of some organized crime group. But the curiosity, the pull, refused to let her rest. The next morning, as she walked through the academy courtyard, she noticed someone standing at the edge, watching. It was him, the same man. She ducked into a group of students, heart racing. When she looked back, he was gone, vanished like a shadow. Weeks passed, and Amina started to notice strange occurrences. Messages slipped under her door with warnings she didn't understand. Unmarked black cars parked near her dorm at odd hours, a shadow at the edge of her vision as she walked the streets of Seoul. Her fear was mounting, but a strange thrill accompanied it, a sense that her life had irrevocably shifted. One evening, she decided to confront the fear head-on. She slipped out after class, walking down a quieter street, pretending to be confident, hoping to catch a glimpse of the shadow that haunted her days. She turned a corner too sharply, and suddenly a group of men lunged at her, shouting in Korean she barely understood. Before she could react, the same dark figure appeared, gun drawn, moving with lethal precision. "Stay behind me," he ordered. His voice was low, dangerous, commanding. The men froze. One attempted to lunge, and the gun cracked, a single warning shot that made the man's knees buckle. The others fled, fear etched across their faces. Amina's breath was ragged. Who are you?" she managed, voice shaking. The man's eyes softened just slightly, enough for her to catch a flicker of something human beneath the storm of his presence. "You are alive because I let you be," he said. "Next time, stay away from what you do not understand." In the following days, Amina couldn't shake him. She tried to focus on her classes, her dancing, her new friends, but the man haunted her every thought. She began to notice small things, a reflection in a car window, the distant hum of a luxury engine, a shadow that moved too deliberately to be coincidence. One afternoon, after dance practice, she stopped by a street-side cafe to catch her breath. The moment she sat down, a yawa's shadow fell over her table. She looked up. "You dance well," he said. She nearly choked on her tea. The voice, so familiar, so commanding, belonged to the man who had saved her life. I don't know what you mean," she stammered. He leaned casually against the table, hands in his pockets, and smiled faintly. "I've seen you dance. It's rare, fearless, beautiful, dangerous in its own way." Her cheeks burned. "Why are you here?" "To make sure no one hurts you," he replied simply, eyes never leaving hers. "Do you understand how lucky you are that night, that I chose to let you walk away?" Amina shook her head. I don't even know your name." He paused. "Names are complicated. Call me Jae-min." The name alone carried weight, as if spoken. It had meaning, danger, and control all wrapped into one. She swallowed hard, realizing her life had spiraled into something she wasn't prepared for, but couldn't escape. Amina didn't yet know that Jae-min was the most feared mafia boss in Seoul, the leader of the Black Serpents. That the moment their eyes had met in that warehouse, he had recognized in her something he had never seen in anyone before. Fearlessness. The ability to look at him without flinching. The only person who could penetrate the walls he had built around his life. Weeks passed, each day escalating in tension. Rival mafia factions learned about the witness, plotting against her, plotting to hurt Jae-min through her. She felt it, an invisible hand closing in, a threat she couldn't name, but that made her pulse race whenever she stepped outside. And every time, without fail, Jae-min appeared, saving her, watching her, studying her, becoming more than just a shadow at the edge of her life. By now, she began to feel a strange connection, though fear and attraction warred inside her chest. Every time he was near, she felt the world both shrink and expand. Smaller in her vulnerability, larger in possibility. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park, Amina finally asked, "Why me? Why are you like this?" Jae-min stopped, turning to her fully. The city lights danced across his sharp features. "Because," he said slowly, deliberately, "you're the first person who didn't see me as a monster. You looked at me, and you saw someone worth noticing." Amina's throat tightened. "I didn't mean to." "You didn't," he interrupted softly, almost tenderly. "But it doesn't matter. You became my weakness the moment you didn't fear me." Her stomach lurched, and a dangerous thrill ran through her. She wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to punch him for scaring her half to death, yet she couldn't stop the truth she felt. Amina woke with a lingering unease. Even though she had convinced herself the previous night was just coincidence, the shadows of the city had a way of creeping into her thoughts. She couldn't shake the image of Jaemin's eyes, dark and commanding, following her every movement. And as she walked to her first class, she noticed the black car again, parked too close to her dorm entrance. She quickened her pace, heart thudding. "Hey, Amina!" called her classmate Minji, waving from across the street. "Wait up!" Amina forced a smile and walked toward her, pretending everything was normal. But when she glanced behind her, the car was gone. Her pulse didn't slow until she was inside the crowded classroom, surrounded by the noise and chatter of students. Later that day, after practice, Amina decided to take the longer, well-lit route back to her dorm. She wasn't going to let fear control her. Yet, as soon as she turned the corner near an abandoned warehouse, a familiar shadow stepped into her path. "Jae-min." Her voice was a mixture of relief and frustration. "You shouldn't walk alone here," he said, expression unreadable. "I've told you before." "I don't need a bodyguard," she snapped, trying to mask the flutter in her chest. "You do," he said, stepping closer. "Even if you don't want to admit it, they are watching. They always are." Amina froze. "Who?" Jaemin's eyes narrowed. "People who want to see me weak, and right now, you're the easiest way to do it." Her stomach sank. The weight of his words hit her harder than the gunfire she had narrowly avoided weeks ago. Suddenly, she understood the stakes weren't just about her. They were about the man who had saved her life and the world he commanded. That night, Jae-min sent one of his men to shadow her dorm. Amina noticed subtle signs. A folded note tucked into the pages of her notebook, a shadow that lingered outside her window. She started talking to him through the notes. "I don't understand why you're risking yourself for me," she wrote. The reply was simple. You've already risked more than you know. You just survived. That's enough to care. It was cryptic, but comforting in a twisted way. Every note, every shadow, every intervention drew them closer. Amina began to feel emotions she wasn't ready to identify. Fear, excitement, tension, and something dangerously like attraction. One rainy evening, Amina was heading back from a late rehearsal when a car screeched to a stop beside her. 3 men jumped out, knives drawn, their intentions clear. Panic gripped her chest, but before she could react, a hand grabbed her arm, yanking her into the shadows. "Run!" Jae-min ordered, eyes scanning the street. She ran, heart hammering, lungs burning. They pursued, shouting, but he was always 2 steps ahead, incapacitating each one with precision, leaving them groaning on the wet pavement. When the last man fell, Amina collapsed, drenched and shaking. Why do you care so much?" she asked, voice barely audible over the rain. He crouched in front of her, eyes softened for just a heartbeat. "Because," he said, "you're the only one who hasn't run away from me, from what I am, and the thought of losing you, I can't bear it." Her chest tightened, and a storm of conflicting emotions welled up. Gratitude, fear, admiration, and something far more dangerous. The following days were a mix of tension and discovery. Amina tried to focus on school, but Jae-min's presence was unavoidable. Sometimes he would simply appear outside her practice studio, watching silently. She could feel his gaze, even when she couldn't see him, and each time her pulse accelerated. Their interactions were a delicate dance. He saved her from danger, but she tested his patience constantly, refusing to be treated like a fragile object. "You think I'm weak?" she asked one evening, cornering him in the academy's empty courtyard. "I don't think," he said flatly, his gaze locking onto hers. "I know. You're strong, too strong for your own good. But that's exactly why you're my weakness." She stared at him, trying to understand. "How am I your weakness? I barely know you." He stepped closer, and she felt the heat of his presence. "Because you make me care, and caring is dangerous. You make me feel things I haven't felt in years, things I've buried behind walls of fear and power. And now, nothing else matters as much as keeping you safe." Her breath hitched, and she felt herself wobble under the weight of his words. As days passed, Amina noticed signs that Jae-min's world was closing in on her. Rival factions had caught wind of her existence, their threats escalating from whispers to actions. A small car followed her from the studio one evening, horns blaring as it tried to force her off the road. She ducked into a side street, heart racing, only to find herself trapped by a group of masked men. "Jae-min!" she screamed, panic rising. From the shadows he appeared, moving like a shadow himself, dispatching attackers with ruthless precision. By the time the last man fell, Amina was shaking uncontrollably, drenched in rain and terror. I'm fine," she stammered, though she wasn't. "You're not," he said quietly, lifting her chin so their eyes met. "But you will be, because I won't let anyone harm you." For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the air between them charged with unspoken words. Then he reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. "You have to trust me," he murmured. Weeks turned into months, and their connection deepened. Amina learned small things about him, how meticulous he was, how he never let anyone enter his world, and how he silently observed everything. She discovered he had a rare vulnerability. His emotions, usually buried under layers of calculated power, were fragile around her. She was beginning to understand why he was drawn to her, why he couldn't stay away, One evening, as they walked through the neon-lit streets of Seoul, Amina finally asked the question that had been burning inside her. Do you care about me? Jae-min stopped, his expression unreadable. Do you want me to? Yes, she whispered, her heart in her throat. He studied her, then, without warning, leaned close, so close she could feel his breath on her skin. I do, more than I ever thought possible. You've become my weakness, and I can't undo it, even if I wanted to. Her chest tightened, and a thrill ran through her. Fear and desire tangled inside her, creating a whirlwind she couldn't resist. But danger was never far behind. One night, as she returned from a late rehearsal, she was grabbed from behind, a hand clamped over her mouth. Before she could scream, she was thrown into a van, the doors slamming shut. Panic surged through her veins as the vehicle sped away. Stay calm, a voice whispered in her ear, none of the voices she recognized. Or you'll regret it. Her mind raced. She had been careful. She had trusted Jae-min to protect her. And now she was trapped, a pawn in a dangerous game she barely understood. Meanwhile, Jae-min had anticipated this. Watching from the shadows, he had tracked her every step, and now he was moving swiftly, the calm fury in his eyes warning the world that anyone who dared touch her would regret it. In the van, Amina struggled against her captors, every instinct screaming to survive. Jae-min! She yelled, but her voice was swallowed by the metal walls and the roaring engine. Outside, Jae-min's black car weaved through traffic with terrifying speed, calculating every turn, every move. He arrived at the abandoned warehouse where the van pulled in, storming inside with a silence that preceded destruction. The men didn't stand a chance. By the time he reached the van, Amina was bruised and terrified, but alive. He lifted her gently, his hands surprisingly soft despite the chaos around them. You are mine, he said, low and dangerous, his voice filled with emotion that startled even him. No one touches you. Ever. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from the intensity of his presence, the truth in his words, and the realization that her life had become entwined with his in ways she couldn't undo. Amina woke in a room she didn't recognize, the faint hum of air conditioning mixing with the rhythmic beating of her own heart. The window was high, the curtains thick, and the furniture minimal but elegant. She pushed herself up, wincing as she brushed against a bruise forming along her side. The memory of the van, the masked men, the fear, was still vivid, sharp as a blade. A door opened quietly. Good morning, Jae-min's voice said, calm, almost casual, but with an undercurrent of control that made her stomach twist. She turned toward him. He was standing just inside, hands in his pockets, as if nothing had happened, yet everything in the room spoke of his presence. Security cameras, locked doors, the subtle tension in the air. You didn't have to save me, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I did, he replied simply, stepping closer. And I would do it again. Every time. You have no idea how dangerous the world outside those walls is for someone like you. And yet, you survived it. That is why you matter. Amina's eyes narrowed. Someone like me? Yes, he said, unwavering. Someone who doesn't belong in this world, yet has the courage to step into it. Someone who could have been broken, and wasn't. That makes you my weakness. Her chest tightened, and she looked away, unsure if she wanted to feel the warmth and danger radiating from him all at once. Over the next days, she was confined under his careful watch. He didn't call it captivity. He called it protection. Every detail was precise, meticulous. Meals delivered, rehearsals monitored, threats neutralized before she could even perceive them. But the isolation weighed on her, a strange mix of safety and suffocating dependency. "You can't keep me here forever," she said one afternoon, pacing the sleek floors of the apartment. "I don't need to," he replied, watching her every movement. "You don't leave because you trust me, and soon you'll see why trusting me is the only way to survive." She stopped, blinking at him. "I don't understand. Why me? Why risk so much for me?" Jae-min's gaze softened, the smallest flicker of vulnerability crossing his otherwise impenetrable features. "Because you are the first person who saw me and didn't flinch. You looked at me and saw someone worth noticing, and I can't let that go." Her throat tightened. She wanted to laugh, cry, scream, something to release the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Instead, she simply sank onto a chair, feeling the weight of everything crashing down. The tension wasn't just emotional. Danger was closing in, faster and more merciless than ever. One evening, as they walked through the quiet streets of the city to stretch her legs, a sleek black car trailed them. Amina's heart lurched, recognizing the pattern. "They're back," she whispered. Jae-min's expression darkened, and in a flash, he had positioned himself between her and the street, body tense, eyes scanning every angle. "You stay close," he said, voice low and sharp. "Do not move unless I tell you." The car sped forward, tires screeching, and a group of men jumped out, surrounding them. Amina froze, but Jae-min's hands were already on her, pulling her behind him. With terrifying precision, he neutralized the threat. Punches, kicks, and swift disarms, leaving the attackers groaning on the wet asphalt. When the last man fell, Jae-min finally relaxed, but his dark eyes never left her. "Do you understand now?" he asked quietly. "You are not safe in this world, not for long, and I will never let anything happen to you." She nodded, words caught in her throat. Fear, adrenaline, and an unexpected surge of emotion made her knees weak. Days turned into nights filled with cautious training, study, and stolen conversations. Jae-min had a way of watching her without imposing, but every interaction carried weight. Small gestures, adjusting her jacket, brushing rain from her hair, watching silently from the corner of the room, built a web of connection that Amina couldn't untangle. One evening, as she practiced alone, she stumbled. He caught her hand before she hit the ground. Their eyes met, and for the first time, the walls around him seemed to soften. "You're reckless," he said, voice low. "I'm not afraid," she shot back, her own pride flaring. "Not afraid?" he repeated, stepping closer, dangerous calm in his gaze. "You have no idea what you're up against." "I don't care," she said firmly. "I refuse to be afraid of everything. I refuse to let someone else control my life." He studied her, his jaw tightening. "And yet, you are mine to protect. You don't realize the danger you bring me just by existing." Her chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to push away, but the truth lingered between them. Her presence had changed him, weakened him, and yet brought him to life in ways he had never known. But the world outside their bubble wasn't waiting. Amina's existence had been noticed by rival factions who saw her as leverage against Jae-min. One evening, while she was practicing a complicated routine in the studio, a shadow moved across the glass. She froze. Before she could react, masked men rushed in, aiming to capture her. Fear surged through her, but her instincts kicked in. She tried to fight, to run, but they were too many. And then he appeared. Jae-min. Silent, lethal, and unstoppable. He moved with terrifying grace, neutralizing each attacker with a precision that left her both terrified and awestruck. By the time the last man hit the floor, she was trembling, tears streaking her cheeks. "You're hurt," he said softly, kneeling beside her, brushing wet hair from her face. I'm fine," she whispered, though her body shook. "You will not be fine if I lose you," he said, voice low, almost breaking. "Do you understand? Losing you is not an option." The intensity of his words struck her like a physical blow. She wanted to push away, scream, demand distance, but a deeper, unspoken truth rooted her in place. Over the next days, he stayed close, watching, protecting, ensuring nothing could touch her. The tension between them grew, unspoken emotions hanging thick in the air. Every glance, every small touch carried weight. Amina began to see cracks in his armor, the man behind the feared Mafia boss. One night, as they walked along a quiet rooftop, she finally asked the question that had been simmering inside her. "Do you care for me?" Jae-min stopped, turning to her fully. The city lights glinted off his sharp features. "Do you want me to?" "Yes," she whispered, heart hammering. "I do," he said softly. "I've tried to bury it, ignore it, control it. But you are my weakness, Amina, and I won't ignore that anymore." Her breath caught. Fear, excitement, desire. They collided in her chest, leaving her dizzy and disoriented. And yet, she didn't step back. She let the storm of emotions wash over her, because deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The danger escalated faster than either of them could anticipate. One evening, while she was returning from a late rehearsal, the van came again. Strong hands gripped her, muffling her screams, and she was thrown inside, the doors slamming shut. Panic surged. "Jae-min!" she screamed, fighting against her captors. Outside, he had anticipated this. His eyes burned as he tracked the vehicle with precision, his black car weaving through traffic at impossible speeds. He arrived at the abandoned warehouse where the van pulled in and stormed inside. Silence preceding destruction. The men didn't stand a chance. By the time he reached the van, Amina was shaken, but alive. He lifted her carefully, brushing dirt and blood from her face. "You are mine," he said lowly, dangerous and full of emotion. "No one ever touches you." Her chest tightened. She wanted to cry, laugh, scream, all at once. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized one truth. She was no longer just surviving. She was bound to him, in ways neither of them could undo. "Absolutely. Here's batch 4, words 3001-4000. The climax, resolution, and emotional payoff for the black girl who accidentally became the Korean mafia's weakness. Fully cinematic, high tension, dialogue heavy, and with strategic YouTube CTA placement. The night was thick with tension as Jae-min's car skidded into the abandoned warehouse district. Rain-slicked streets reflected neon streaks, but he barely noticed the city around him. His focus was singular. Amina. Every second she was in danger was a second too many. Inside the van, Amina panted, her wrists bruised from the restraints. Her mind raced, adrenaline colliding with fear and something she didn't want to name, anticipation. The men who had taken her were skilled, but they were sloppy, underestimating the storm that was coming for them. "Where is he?" she demanded, struggling against the ropes. "He can't save you now," one of the masked men sneered. "Not this time." Amina's heart clenched. "You don't know him," she hissed. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Outside, Jae-min crouched behind a shipping container, eyes sharp, muscles coiled. He had tracked the van's GPS, calculated their movements, and knew exactly when to strike. The warehouse loomed ahead, shadows crawling along its rusted walls. He didn't hesitate. Every movement was precise, silent, and lethal. Guards fell with barely a sound, the few remaining scattering in terror as he advanced. His eyes were locked on the van, her cage, her danger, her world. Inside, Amina's captors argued, their panic rising as the sounds of conflict outside reached them. Before they could react, the doors burst open. Jae-min stepped in, a dark force of fury and precision. He moved faster than their brains could process, disarming, incapacitating, and eliminating threats with terrifying skill. "Run!" he growled, voice low and commanding, his dark eyes never leaving hers. She didn't hesitate. Her legs moved almost on their own, heart hammering as she ran into his embrace. They stumbled out of the van together, rain pelting down, mixing with sweat and adrenaline. Amina clung to him, terrified and exhilarated. "You're insane!" she gasped. "I'm careful," he replied, voice softening, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. "I've never lost anyone I care about, and I'm not starting now." Her eyes met his. In that moment, she understood. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the reason he could feel again. The world had hardened him, but she had softened the edges he didn't know existed. The danger wasn't over. Rival Mafia operatives had surrounded the warehouse, realizing too late that their pawn had been taken from them. Jae-min didn't hesitate. He moved with calculated chaos, a storm of shadows and lethal force, leaving adversaries incapacitated and terrified. When the dust settled, the streets were empty, save for him and Amina, drenched and breathing heavily. The city seemed to hold its breath with them. "You could have been killed," he said quietly, eyes scanning her for injury. "I know," she whispered, voice trembling. "And yet, here I am." "You shouldn't have been here," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "But I can't regret it. You're my weakness and my strength, all at once." Her chest tightened. She wanted to protest, to argue, to scream, but the truth of it, terrifying, intoxicating, took her words away. They walked through the empty streets, rain soaking them both, the neon lights casting sharp reflections on wet asphalt. For the first time, the world felt paused, a moment suspended for just the two of them. "You saved me. Again," she murmured. "Why? Why me?" He stopped, cupping her face with both hands, thumb brushing her cheek. "Because no one else would ever see me the way you do. And I would burn the world to protect you." Amina's eyes glistened, a mixture of tears, fear, and longing. "And what if I don't belong in your world? What if I can't handle it?" "You already do," he said, voice breaking slightly. "You survived more than anyone should, and you still stand. That's why you belong. That's why I belong with you." Her breath caught. Every fear, every doubt, every hesitation collapsed under the intensity of his words. And for the first time, she let herself feel the connection, the pull, the unspoken bond that had grown between them since the night in the alley. Back at the penthouse, the weight of the night slowly ebbed away. Amina sat on the edge of the sofa, exhausted, bruised, but alive. Jae-min placed a damp towel on her shoulder, eyes never leaving hers. "You don't have to pretend anymore," he said softly. "I'm not just a monster, not with you." I'm scared," she admitted, voice trembling. "Every time I think I understand, something else happens. You, them, it's too much." He stepped closer, hands brushing her hair back. "Then be scared with me. Let me protect you. Let me fight for you, because I will. Every time, forever." Her lips quivered, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Forever?" "Yes," he said, voice low, unwavering. "Forever." She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Safe. For the first time in weeks, truly safe. Days passed, and the city began to feel less threatening, the danger slightly receding under Jae-min's vigilant watch. They shared moments of quiet intimacy, small touches, smiles, laughter that felt fragile and precious against the chaos they had survived. One evening, on the rooftop of the penthouse, overlooking the neon-lit city, Jae-min turned to her. "Do you understand now?" "Understand what?" she asked, heart still fluttering. "That you are not just someone I protect. You are my anchor, my weakness, and my strength. You've changed everything, including me." Amina's eyes glistened. "And I can't leave, can I?" He smiled, faint but genuine. "Not if I'm still standing. Not if I care. And I do. More than I ever imagined possible." Her heart leapt. Fear, thrill, love, all collided into a single, overwhelming moment. And in that, she knew their bond was unbreakable. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, loving, and fighting alongside someone who would never let her fall. Weeks later, as the city's chaos continued beyond their walls, they walked together through a quiet street. Amina slipped her hand into his, and he squeezed it, a silent promise of protection and partnership. "You know," she said lightly, teasing despite everything, "I never thought I'd be the Korean Mafia's weakness." He laughed softly, a rare sound, eyes warm. "Neither did I. And yet, here we are." She smiled, heart full, mind racing with the impossible journey that had brought her to this moment. Dangerous, terrifying, exhilarating. "Promise me," she whispered, "that no matter what, you'll always keep me safe." "I promise," he said, voice low, sincere. "No one touches you, not ever, not while I breathe." She leaned into him, finally letting go of fear, letting go of the adrenaline, letting herself be human. And for the first time, she believed in something larger than herself. Love, protection, and a bond forged in danger and fire. If you loved how Amina and Jae-min's story unfolded, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment below your favorite part. Share this story with someone who loves thrilling romance and danger. It only gets better when shared. The city lights flickered around them, rain beginning to fall softly, washing the streets clean. They stood together, hand in hand, facing a world that had tried to tear them apart. And now, stronger than ever, they would face it together. Amina, the girl who became the Korean Mafia's weakness, and Jae-min, the man who would protect her at all costs. No threat, no rival, no danger could undo the bond forged between them. And in that moment, the story wasn't just about survival. It was about love, power, and the unshakable strength found in the most unexpected places. The night stretched out, endless, filled with promise, danger, and the undeniable thrill of the life they now shared.